to tell us about the sad stories that he researches, and this day's story is about Brassel, which is not far from here. How are you, Harold?
Very well. I'm great, Danny. A bit sad this morning with this story, but hey, it's a beautiful sunny day. Can't complain.
It's a great day. It's still a little bit nippy outside. A lot of Japanese paratroopers getting around.
Well, this is a great time of year with the winter sun still, with the last few days of winter.
Damien's shaking his head. Can't you say that anymore?
No,
Why?
not really. No, because it's not... I know you're all about not being politically correct, but it is politically correct.
Danny, there goes another Japanese paratrooper who didn't pull the cord in the right time. Go on, mate.
Yeah, look, I've, as you know, and you were saying before, I've found some great stories like the time Captain Thunderbolt came to town or when getting war memorials corrected, but sometimes I find really sad, tragic stories that you just have to shake your head about. And this one today is about George Cuffe from Brassel.
Yeah, George.
Now, in July 1874, a single mother by the name of Margaret Smith was in the Ipswich courthouse after her stepfather had stripped the roof off a house and tried to throw her out. Now, his name was Thomas Dosang, who was a well-known drunkard. Now, he did it because he didn't want Margaret's brother living in the house with her. Anyway, Dosang was fined 5 shillings for assault, but that was scant recompense for the trauma he had caused to Margaret and her 9-month-old son. You see, young Margaret was back in court 8 weeks later. This time, it was charging the father of her illegitimate baby with desertion. Now, the father's name was George Cuffe from Brassel. Now, he admitted he was the father of the child and had actually been paying maintenance up until 7 weeks earlier. Then he stopped. Now, George agreed to pay what he owed, and the mother, Margaret, agreed to give up the child with 1 month's notice. You see, George was going to raise the baby himself, but that never happened because 6 months later, the child died at just 18 months old. But the story of the father, George Cuffe, goes way further than that. You see, just 7 days after the birth of his illegitimate son, George Cuffe married another woman called Matilda. Now, George and Matilda's life together promised to be a great one. You see, George was granted 30 acres of land and a homestead at Brassel. They would even have 9 children together. But sadness was not very far away. You see, their first child, born in 1874, died at just 1 day old. Now, that same day that his legitimate baby died, George stopped payments for his illegitimate son. And 7 weeks later, George, full of grief, was facing court over the matter. And his family was generally up to something. You see, one daughter married old Bill Larson from Brassel.
Bill.
He was a widower. Yeah, Bill. Now, he was a widower, and so George's daughter brought up his 3 children. Now, one time, Bill was in court himself after causing a bit of a disturbance in the street. He was yelling to his neighbour to come outside, calling him things like a dirty dog, pig, mongrel, swine, as you do. This was after a daughter told him that the neighbour was peeking through her window. So he was a bit upset. Another one of George Cuffe's son-in-laws, Wilfred, was fined for failing to lodge a tax return. We've never done that. And George's son, William, was fined for drunkenness. But the really sad part of this story came in 1890 when George took his own son, James, to court to face the Ipswich magistrate. Now, young James was just 14 years old and was continually out late at night and keeping bad company. And so George, in complete desperation, took his son to court, hoping that he'd be sent to the Reformatory school at Lytton in Brisbane. George was willing to pay the 5 shillings 10 pence a week for his son's maintenance. So the magistrate agreed and ordered that the boy be sent to the Reformatory for 12 months. So, look, Ipswich history has some great stories, but then there's ones like George Cuffe, with the roof being stripped off, the illegitimate son dying, followed quickly by a legitimate daughter dying, and then sending your own son to reformatory school. Imagine that. And look, there's so much incredible history out there.
You know what, but they had sadness, but they got on with life. They didn't have everything's a mental... Like, everyone gets down on the dumps and depressed occasionally. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's right, and that's what George did. He tried to control what he could control. The other things weren't, but he wanted to get his son back on the straight and narrow, so he did what he could do. And from all the records that I found or couldn't find, it seems that James did get his act together. So it's a good story in the end.
Now, Kelby's she's out on a bivouac, training group 4. They're listening at the bong, whatever they're not smoking them. Anyhow, that's there's bivouacs going on all weekend out in the bush. Picture perfect weekend out there. The young people learning what it's like to work under adversity, sleeping on the ground on a piece of plastic, eating around a campfire. Not probably sleeping that good. It's really good training, and to the staff who do a wonderful job. I'm so proud to have you as my colleagues.
Sounds like reformatory school, doesn't it?
Well, didn't hurt you and me.
Kind of, correct.
All right, so how do we get a copy of this story and all the other stories?
You go to the socials for History Out There, or go to the website historyouthere.com. There's hundreds of stories there for you.